on what scale do you think that the CCP is abusing Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang?
I'm sure that the scale, I'd say it's very similar to what we do here in the United States when it comes to Patriot Act and carting people off to Guantanamo Bay.
Oh,
I'm sure it's a very
but we don't put an entire people in camps based on their religious identity.
I think
Guantanamo Bay has, Guantanamo at this point is dozens of people.
Right, but you cannot make the claim by any stretch of any imagination that all of the Uyghurs are suddenly disappearing into these camps. If you go to Xinjiang, they're there. You can see them.
They aren't. No, they aren't. But but we don't put an entire people in camps. An entire people in camps. An entire people in camps.
Right, but you cannot make the claim by any stretch of any imagination that all of the Uyghurs are suddenly disappearing into these camps. If you go to Xinjiang, they're there. You can see them.
They aren't. No, they aren't. But this is a very real fear of the Uyghur people in Xinjiang. Right. First of all, we can't. We do have satellite images, and we have the testimony of people who have escaped the camps, and you know the relatives, and there's corroborating evidence here, and all of the other countries have reason to defend China because they're in bed with China for economic reasons and the way that China supports their economy, and the way that they hope China will support their economy. All of the other countries have reason to defend China because they're in bed with China for economic reasons and the way that China supports their economy, and the way that they hope China will support their economy. But I will say, I think, you know, the reality that people are being put in camps based on their identities, it's not every Uyghur Muslim, but it is a huge chunk of the Uyghur Muslims that have at least gone through them and cycled through them and maybe have been released. But at the same time, there's this enormous fear. You have members of the CCP going into their homes. It's just an incredible invasion of privacy and of freedom, and I don't think there's any equivalence.
They're literally not allowed to practice their religion. They're literally not allowed to practice.
They're not allowed to practice Salafist Wahhabism. That is absolutely correct. They're not allowed to practice Salafist Sunni Islam, which is the more radical version. That is what China has banned. That is true. So even if a person's not a criminal,
what is going on here? What is going on here? There's no. Do you think that there's some other mosque that they're able to attend? Like, what are you talking about?
Muslims in China. I mean, there's
a Chinese government. There's one Chinese government sanctioned mosque that they're allowed to attend, and therefore there's no cultural genocide going on.
To practice Salafist. Yes, it's banned to practice Salafist.
I would encourage you to read some of the dispatches. From people who have experienced this.
Read some of the dispatches from people who have experienced this.
Extensive research
and not through the prism of
testimony.
Do you doubt their
testimony? Do you doubt their testimony?
Some of it, but not all of it. No, I do think that there's definitely, like I mentioned, human rights abuses going on for sure. I mean, it's prison. It's like Guantanamo Bay. There's definitely stuff going on that shouldn't be going on. But to call it an ethnic genocide is what I take issue with specifically, and I think that's warmongering language.
So if you compare what the culture was, 20 years ago to what it is today.
But if you compare what the culture was, 20 years ago to what it is today, would you not acknowledge that they've obliterated the culture?
I would say the culture shifted. It became more.
That's a weird passive way to describe what happened. It didn't just passively shift. The Chinese government shifted it, right? By policy.
Some more radical religion kind of infiltrated, and we see this happening in lots of areas around the world, as we've seen.
Well, then why? Yes, there are radicals here in the United States. So does that justify like a massive crackdown sweeping up people?
There are radicals here in the United States. So does that justify like a massive crackdown sweeping up people?
Do you think that the Republican Party has changed? Do you think it's become more radical right-wing? I mean, things change.
I just don't think that's a productive, I guess, parallel. And it seems to me that we're not going to agree on the scale of the abuses. But I do think that we can agree that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, that there are different things going on. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And that's that. I guess.
I mean, there were a handful of terrorist attacks.
Yes.
There are also terrorist attacks here in the United States. We would never say, okay, well then, therefore, we're going to ban the Christians.
And it's an ethnic. It's on the basis of an ethnic identity. This is not just a religious identity. It's an ethnic identity.
Right.
Yeah.
It depends, right? But I don't agree that they're actually doing that. I think that you
just did agree to it. You said that you did agree that the culture that exists today is radically different as a result of Chinese policy.
It's been suppressed on a mass
No, I
scale.
don't agree with that. That's not what I said. But I'll do a whole piece on the Uyghurs, and we can talk about this another time.
No, let's not actually do that.
But I'll do a whole piece on the Uyghurs, and we can talk about this another time.
No, let's not actually do that.
Okay,
all right. Well, thank you
let's
so
go.
much for watching. We'll have more Rise coming up.
But we don't put an entire people in camps.
Right, but you cannot make the claim by any stretch of any imagination that all of the Uyghurs are suddenly disappearing into these camps.
aren't.
If you go to Xinjiang, they're there.